Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a particular district, and it's in a western country that's going through convulsions in terms of the mass level of social engineering that they're engaging in, which is all very anti-white, anti-working class white in particular. But I've noticed that they've made international headlines. This prosecutor's office, like a district attorney's office, they've made international headlines a few times over the last 12 months, given the choice of cases that they're going to prosecute and the zeal that they apply and the resources they apply to launching prosecutions, and how they appear to be able to bring these cases in front of activist judges and get activist legal aid lawyers to encourage the white people to plead guilty and this sort of thing. Now, they're quite clearly an activist, pretty activist, but I never bothered to go online and just have a look at who are the people in this prosecutor's office. Now, by the same time, they're zealously going after straight white males and even straight white females and throwing them in prison or getting them thrown in prison. In spite of that, they are very, very, very softly on brown and black people by comparison. So if a black person or brown person screams for the death of all Jews, then nothing happens. If a straight white woman or man prays silently outside of an abortion clinic, then they'll get 12 months in prison and so on. So wildly different legal outcomes. And it seems that only white people, particularly straight white people, have to be treated with great brutality and interesting interpretation of the law, effectively being denied, I would argue, due legal process, whereas the brown and black people are treated along tribal lines, and we don't want to upset them, we don't want to offend them. So we're in this interesting sort of paradigm that's going on all over the Western world, where the law-abiding citizens are viciously policed, whereas the citizens or visitors or whatever you want to call them that don't abide by the law are treated very differently and very leniently. Anyway, so I got online to have a look at these, the people in this prosecutor's office that are clearly radical activists. There's no question of that. And again, I hadn't bothered to look previously. So I get online, and there are 7 prosecutors in the department or in this section. And it covers an area with a population of many millions. And so they're all women, 7 women, all women. 3 of them are black, brown, 3 are single mothers, 2 are lesbian. All of them have low grade, 4th tier, 5th tier law degrees that they got with like a gender studies major and this sort of thing. None of them have degrees that are worth a pinch of shit, in my view, anyway. All claim to have come from working class, disadvantaged backgrounds. Now, the senior police officer in that district that seems to appear on camera with them most of the time is also a lesbian. So I don't know, it's a bit of a lesbian cabal here. They all have little bios where they talk about women's rights, feminist activism. We are here to dismantle barriers. In this job, I'm here to social justice is my first priority, and so on and so forth. So these are not people. Now, these are the prosecutors. These are the people who have abundant financial resources at their disposal, and they have the power to decide what cases they'll prosecute and which cases they won't. So, a case a few months ago where a bunch of brown people beat the shit out of a police officer and no charges. The department just like, oh no, we're not going to charge that. Yeah, no, let that one go. And the list goes on of cases where they should have pursued it with great vigor, and or just simply charge as they would anyone else, but they didn't. Now they don't believe that the law as it stands is legitimate, because it's somehow part of some wider oppression of everyone other than straight white males in their activist cognizance. And so the law isn't really legitimate. So it's their job to circumvent the law, to effectively rewrite it in background and to apply it on the basis of radicalized feminist, lesbian, social justice principles. So the law is to be applied to create social equity and equity outcomes, and it is there for restorative justice. So the straight white male that's that you're dragging into court, is he guilty of anything? Well, maybe not, but that doesn't really matter. He's part of the patriarchy, the misogyny, the oppression, and apart from that, straight white men have been oppressing minorities for centuries. Therefore, he's guilty on a legacy basis for all the things that happened 1,000 years ago, and therefore we can punish him today because straight white males did oppressive things 1,000 years ago or something like that. So they see this wider miasma of oppression, restorative justice, and that the law itself is not legitimate. So they deny, firstly, they decide which cases to prosecute. And again, if the law is applied, I mean, everyone's supposed to be equal before the law, whether it's being charged by the police or whether it's being, the due legal process in court and so on. And that's not what's happening. So these prosecutors are flagrantly, brazenly, even skiting about it, bragging about it, gloating about it. They're breaking the law on a number of fronts. And there's no political mechanism or oversight mechanism to stop them. No, you have to charge this one. So the whole process is ridiculously politicized by ideological fanatics. Now, let's suppose you're the chief legal officer in the nation or the district or the state or whatever it might be. What inclines you to go out and pick angry, bitter, hateful, radical activists to be prosecutors? What even inclines you to do that? What grip of madness is upon you that you'd want to do that, or would even think about doing it? Now, if the role was mine, I mean, the slightest hint of activism, radicalism, or bitterness, or anything like that, and they'd be off the list of candidates or applicants for the job. They just wouldn't have a chance at getting it. I want people who are independent and will impartially apply the law equally to all people. And if that means that you're locking up or bringing to court people that are so-called protected minority groups, well, that's it. They still have to abide by the law. We all have to uphold and abide by the law. That's just kind of how it works. And once you start making sort of, wow, they've been oppressed for centuries, we can let them off. They can, assault and murder people. It's kind of all right because restorative justice, and it's those straight white boy scalps that we want, which is a universal attitude around the Western world at the moment. And you see it in any court where ideology has any part. I've been in, for example, a divorce court and watching two black or brown people getting divorced, or somebody, some dirt poor guy, there's one guy, he had a 10-year, 15-year prison sentence for something or other, and his ex-wife wouldn't bring the children around to the prison to see him once, I don't know, whatever it was, once a week or whatever the visiting time was. And so he was able to take it to court, fully paid for by the taxpayer, but take it to court to compel the ex-wife to bring the children over. Now, I'm not arguing the merits of the case or not, but he was thus a victim, and he was illiterate as well. He was a victim, and so all the resources of the state were at his disposal. He was a straight white guy, by the way. In another case, that and by the way, the people involved just couldn't have cared less. most junior trainee intern lawyer was put on the case to represent him, and she was dressed in clothes that the lawyer, this is, dressed in clothes that wouldn't even have made, past mustering in Walmart or something. The seams were tearing in the trousers, and they couldn't really have cared less. They were going through just the paperwork motions. Another woman was there, a brown woman, and she was in forcible drug rehab, and they just let her out long enough to hear the case. And she wanted to force her ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, or it was, to bring the children over to wherever the drug rehab place was, because they wouldn't let her out for more than an hour or two a day or something. And again, no one could have given a shit about it. But then, in the next case after that, following that, was a straight white male, well dressed in an immaculate suit, good job, property owning. This is like a divorce thing, property owning, and it was like a bolt of electricity got put through the place. Suddenly, everyone's animated and they're activated, and the lawyers are coming in, and the heavyweight lawyers, and it's this, and it's suddenly the tempo and the you could just sense the anticipation, the electricity in the room just went through the fucking roof, because this straight white male with money and a good job and assets was there, and they were going to nail his fucking Nazi ass. So activists are all over the place, and this is what these women in this activist group, but they've been hired and put in these positions because they're activists. So whoever's sitting on top of the thing here, and whoever's selecting these people, is purposefully and willfully, and I would argue malevolently, picking radical, hate-filled activists and letting them loose. Now, the issue of injustice, whether it be the choice of cases to prosecute, they always seem to be extra double ready to go after straight white males, or white people in particular, but very reluctant to go after brown and black people. If the crime's heinous, they will. But if there's any way they can sort of justify not going after the black and brown people, they'll do it. Whereas the tiniest infraction, can be a mean posting online, or again, praying 100 meters away from an abortion clinic, silently praying, by the way, not accosting anybody, and that's enough to make an arrest if it's a white person and drag them off. Whereas, Islamic groups can march up and down, screaming and shouting obscenities and screaming and shouting that they want to, kill non-believers and kill Jews and so on. That doesn't matter. Hey, why is the law not applied equally, you would argue. So, but on top of that, it even gets worse than that. There's the choice of cases to prosecute. But when the case comes to court, or when the people get illegal, a lot of these white people they're going after are lower working class white people. They're not sophisticated. They don't have sophisticated understanding of the law. They've never been convicted or accused of anything. They're just simple people, and so they go after them, and they assign them a legal aid lawyer, because they're people who've got no money, or a lawyer, a cheap lawyer. And then the state works behind the scenes, because all lawyers now are effectively agents of the state. They are there to enact and to further and implement state policy. They pretend to be your lawyer, but they're not. So the legal aid lawyer will come along and say, well, typically it's going to be a prison term for this, and they will put you in prison. You'll be in prison. I know the judge is tough, and you'll be in prison. but if you cop up the plea, if you say you're guilty, I can get you off, and you'll be, home by the end of the week or something like that. So, or the lawyer, maybe they're paying for the lawyer, but the lawyer gets a lot of his or her work from government work, which most of the legal work is now these days, or NGO work, which much of it is. Very little work will happen outside of government and NGO work for lawyers these days. Some of it will, but not much. Now, or big multinationals type stuff, and the big multinational lawyers, they're not going to bother about some working class flunky out in the burbs who's been accused of some bullshit. I mean, they wouldn't piss on that sort of thing. So the lawyer who gets most of their income from the NGOs and the government is a quiet word. Look, Billy Bob, I hear you're representing that working class straight white male who was accused of posting something online. Well, we look, the word I'm getting is we'd like to see a conviction here. We'd like to see a bit of prison term, bit of detention. So do you think you could suggest to your client it might be in everyone's interest? Might be better for everybody. Better for everybody if he pleads guilty. And maybe you could tell him he'll get a lighter sentence. Do you think you could arrange that, Billy? But by the way, that you're on the panel to get another $200,000 legal contract to represent the NGO or this or that or the government such and such. And I think we're deciding on that in the next few days. So how's the payments in that new BMW going, Billy Bob? Look, I'm sure you'll do the right thing. I'm just, I'm just trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. I'm just letting you know sort of the whispers that I'm hearing. So Billy Bob takes the cue here. So he goes into his client who's supposed to be paying him to represent them. The client doesn't know that this guy is now representing the state, and maybe was all along. So he says, look, you better plead guilty. But then the court says, you've got a year or two or whatever in prison for a mean tweet of the judge, because the judge is an activist. The judge is an agent of the state as well, not an independent judicial officer, far from it. So the guy, well, you told me that a guy, I don't know what happened. They assigned the judge and he was just being tough. He heard this or something. Now, on top of that, in terms of due legal process, not only is the state getting into and corrupting and threatening and perverting the guy's lawyer, get their own lawyer to sell them out, which is now widespread, by the way, but also they're not allowing. There's no equal burden of proof. The state doesn't have to prove its case; it needs to only assert it or allege it. And also, they can now assign, which they do blithely and blatantly, they assign intent. You intended to be a Nazi, or so you intended for this. They did. How do you prove that? How can you prove intent? We say that you did intend to spread hate. Prove that you didn't. So the burden of proof is reversed. The state has a very low burden of proof to, and can just arbitrarily pluck it out of their ass that you had intent to do bad. But when you have to disprove something that has never been proved in the first place, you're in a virtually impossible position. So this is how they subvert due legal process now. Now, if the state had a high burden of proof, for example, let's suppose I'm the judge and the prosecutor says, well, we believe Billy Bob was intending to spread hatred. Sure, what is your evidence? Well, there was this posting online and kind of sort of, no, where is your evidence, Madam Prosecutor? Well, we don't really have any. We're just saying that it could have been maybe that, they said that they didn't like mass migration. So if they don't like mass migration, it means they hate brown and black people. If they hate brown and black people, that's because they're fascist. And if they're fascist, it's because they're Nazi. They're Nazi because they're fucking Hitler. So they play this little game of escalation. I mean, imagine if you could do this mathematically. Well, we say one actually means two. And if it's two, then it must mean four. And if it's four, it must mean 16. So we can say 16 instead of, but hold on, the evidence you're producing is one. How did you get to 16? And this is how it's done. So, all right, then, Billy Bob, you have to now disprove that you're Hitler and a Nazi and you own a million swastikas. I mean, you can't do it. It's an impossible situation because they can infer some sort of ideological miasma of what you might have been thinking, then use that to prosecute you and put you in prison. How do you actually refute something like that? You can't. And that's the tactic and technique they use. But any honest prosecutor or honest magistrate or judge wouldn't allow that even for a nanosecond. But that's where we're at now in the judicial process. But I was surprised to the extent that every single prosecutor in that prosecutor's office is a radical activist, and that's purposefully done like that. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.